Hi everyone, thanks again for tuning in. Let's pause for a moment and talk about menopause misinformation. Why? Because the menopause market is worth $600 billion according to Forbes. This is great because women need innovative, evidence-based and effective solutions. But for many reasons, including the gender health gap, it's also ripe for misinformation, disinformation, and exploitation. So let's dive into what PAUSE stands for and how you can use it to your advantage. P is for purpose. It's an info aiming to educate you or just making a sales pitch. If it feels like a sales pitch, it's time to hit pause. I don't always have a problem with it. I'm also a business owner, so I understand people have to pay bills. But step back and look deeper into what they're offering and how. Has their product been independently tested over multiple times? Do they claim their solution is the only one? Are they offering a panacea? These are red flags. A stands for Alarmist Headlines. You know the type. Blood sugar spikes cause menopause symptoms. Or cortisol is the hormone to blame for your mood swings. Sounds dramatic, right? It's an effective fear tactic, especially when you feel confused and dismissed. I get it. I've fallen for this trick when my chronic pain was invalidated for many years. But the issue is, untested miracle cures traps the vulnerable.
So I've enlisted the help of Dr. Chandni Kumar, a brilliant biochemist and molecular biologist, to deep dive into the research and share her insights on these two claims.
Let's pause here for a second and fact-check these claims by scientific evidence. Claim 1, does blood glucose spike cause menopause symptoms? And claim 2, is cortisol to blame for your mood swings in menopause? Let's start with claim 1. Menopause is associated with hormonal changes that can affect insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. Estrogen decline during menopause can lead to increased insulin resistance and potentially impacting blood glucose levels. A review in the journal Menopause in 2007 highlighted no absolute evidence of a deleterious effect on menopause on plasma glucose has been proven. A study in 2012 in the same journal investigated in a small cohort of 143 postmenopausal healthy and normal weight women the impact of hot flashes on insulin resistance and found no direct link between insulin resistance and hot flashes. But due to small sample size, the scientific information value is a bit low. Another study in 2022 investigated metabolic changes associated with menopause in 1,000 individuals, and key findings were: first, postmenopausal women had higher fasting blood glucose levels, about 6%, and HbA1c were 5% higher compared to premenopausal women. Glucose response after a meal was significantly higher in postmenopausal women, and when we look at the 2-hour incremental area under the curve for glucose, it was about 42% higher in postmenopausal women. Continuous glucose monitoring measured showed unfavorable glycemic variability and the time in range for postmenopausal women compared to premenopausal women. In age-matched subgroups, after a meal, the glucose response remained high in postmenopausal women, about 4% when you compare 0 to 2 hours, suggesting the effect is not solely due to the age. And menopausal hormone therapy was associated with more favorable fasting glucose in insulin levels. So the key takeaway here is the relation between blood glucose spike and menopause symptoms is really weak and more of a correlation rather than of a causation. And understanding the biology of menopause is very complex since many factors play a role. Further research is needed to understand which changes have an overall impact on which biological process. Next up, we fact-check claim 2. Cortisol is to blame for your mood swings. Not quite true. Research indicates that there is a connection between cortisol levels and menopausal symptoms, but the relationship is not that straightforward, as cortisol is being solely the one responsible for mood swings. In a study using a small cohort of 132 women between the year of 1990 and 2005, suggested that the cortisol may be involved in the physiological changes occurring during menopause. Another study published in 2021 examined a small cohort of 69 postmenopausal women and the influence of different interventions on cortisol level. Urinary cortisol levels were measured over a period of 3 months. Here the data indicates that a reduction of cortisol level might be associated with a reduction in menopausal symptoms. It's very crucial to understand that menopausal symptoms are influenced by a variety of factors, not just cortisol per se. Research has examined the influence of menopause-related factors, stress-related factors, other symptoms, social factors, and health-related factors on cortisol levels during menopause. This suggests that the relationship between cortisol and menopause symptoms is very multifaceted. On top, we also have the hormonal changes in estrogen and progesterone and other thyroid hormones playing an additional role in overall mood regulation as well. In conclusion, while there's evidence linking cortisol to menopausal symptoms, including potential mood changes, it would be a very oversimplification of the state that cortisol is solely to blame for mood swings during menopause. Overall, both statements are oversimplified and does not take into account the complexity of the issue. Please keep in mind that the information delivered here now is only for educational purposes. Please consider reaching out to a health professional, endocrinologist, or menopause specialist for expert opinion. Now we fact-check these claims, and there are more correlation than causation. So now back to you, Laurena.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar, for fact-checking. Please make sure you follow her podcast, Daily Dose of Honest Science, where she translates cutting-edge research into practice. Link to her details and references below. Now let's get back to those letters.
U is for unique insights. Watch out for those claims of secret knowledge, like only we know why menopause is causing your hair to fall out. Spoiler alert. It's not a conspiracy, but for some health issues, mechanisms are complex. And because there may be a knowledge gap on the best approach for the individual, they take advantage of the uncertainty to get you hooked. S is for sensationalism. You might see ads for that magical supplement that claims to erase hot flashes and every other menopause symptom overnight. And it's backed by science. Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Unless it's a red dragon fruit. After all these years of eating it, I still can't believe the bright red color is natural. What can I say? That's the skeptic in me. And finally, E is for evidence. Check if they back their claims with solid research. Ask for references from trusted and independent sources. Don't fall for the parachute plea. It's an analogy used against evidence-based research, that there's no need to provide evidence because it's so obvious it works. Most recently, this defense is misused by some alternative therapies, claiming that because something is natural, it must be safe, and therefore doesn't need rigorous testing. But let's not forget that even water, if you drink too much of it, is toxic. The poison is in the dose. Check credentials, but be wary of the appeal to authority ambush. Wellfluencers may even go out of their way to highlight this. An example is, I'm a professor or doctor of a big fancy university, so you should just trust me. But their qualifications may not even be relevant to the topic, or they haven't practiced in the field for years. It elevates them, but it doesn't protect you. Transparency is also key. Do they reveal if they're getting paid for promoting these products? Even medical professionals disclose funding sources in scientific papers and conferences. We go out of our way to highlight conflicts of interest. We welcome and expect peer reviews. That's a nerdy way to say we scrutinize each other and expect scrutiny because we know biases exist even if well-intentioned. If you are unsure, seek professional advice. You might think this is costly, but that's a false economy, especially if you end up with 15 supplements on your shelf that you don't take and expensive tests with questionable clinical value. Or even worse, a delay in proper diagnosis and treatment. We Hong Kongers have a saying for this. 雞毛鴨血 literally translates to chicken feather, duck blood, which describes the suffering experienced when you have been exploited. So let's pause and think critically about menopause info, and before you hit that purchase or reshare button. Stay empowered and see you next week for more tips.